Hello everybody, we are in the last video in our opening repertoire and I hope that it will be very interesting because we will play other openings instead of E4 and D4 and we will actually try to transpose two similar to already known lines as much as we can, so we will don't allow our opponent uh, to go to some unprepared territory for us, but we will try to go to our known variations as much as we can. Okay, let me see frequently played lines. First on amateur level, and then on master level, of course, knight f3, which is the Reti opening, and c4, which is an English opening, are the most frequent. So let me first see a b3 move, how to play after b3 move. We will now play e5. Actually, I will not go to c5 to some Sicilian, but b3 allows me to take the center, and I will take e5. And most probably white will play bishop to b2 because that is the purpose of b3, and I will now play knight c6 first, protecting the pawn on e5. And now if white goes d4, we will take with the knight. We will take with the knight, and this is already a certain positional advantage for black here. Okay, stepping back, if c4 instead, we will simply go with developing move, but knight g to e7 here. Knight g to e7. Of course, knight f6 was playable too, but knight g to e7 is more flexible here, and actually I prefer this. And now we step back. If knight c3, we actually can play d5, taking the full center. Stepping back, if e4, now we will play knight f6 move. Okay, stepping back, if d3 move, again we are allowed to play d5, the full center. Stepping back, if knight f3, then we can push the pawn further. Our pawn on g7 is protected. We can push e4 further. Stepping back, if g3, we are again allowed to take the full center with d5. And finally, if e3, we are again allowed to take the full center with d5. Okay, so we don't need to be afraid of this opening. It's a little bit unknown territory, but actually white allows us to be better. Black is somewhat better early in the opening. Okay, we step back and we see another move, which is with the pawn on another side with g3. After g3, I recommend that we go for Sicilian invitation with c5, and whatever with black plays, but most common moves are bishop to g2 or eventually knight f3. In both cases we will play knight c6. So knight c6 in front of c5 pawn is actually preferable in Sicilian if allowed, and we play this after bishop g2, and also after knight f3 first we also can play knight c6. And we will be actually in Sicilian variations soon, so we will not cover further this. Okay, and before going for two main openings, knight f3 and c4, we will first see further e3 move. So another one which we'll cover here is e3 move. Now I recommend that we go with knight f6 move. This is now the most flexible, and we go with knight f6, and let us see what now white can play. If bishop c4, putting immediate pressure on our f7, but we can immediately stop that with d5. Queen protects d5 pawn, so we stop this with simply with d5. And actually we are in, although our structure is as after d4, knight f6, and d5 later. Okay, but there are other options. We will frequently be able to play even Sicilian here. For example, if now g3, we will play c5, and actually we are in a Sicilian. Moving back, if queen f3, and now I recommend that we go with d5 again. So we will either, so knight f6 is flexible. We can choose either to go with d5, and we are in a common territory for d4 openings, or go with c5, which are in a common territory for e4 openings. So after queen f3, I recommend d5. Also, if knight to e2, I recommend that we go with d5. Stepping back, if c3, now this is really weird for white. I recommend now even that we try to play e5 here, fighting for full center here. Okay, we step back. If knight c3, it's a common move for Sicilian. I recommend c5 again, playing Sicilian. Stepping back. If bishop to e2, this is not very common. I will again recommend trying to play e5 here. Also, if c4, I will again recommend e5. So now sometimes I recommend also e5 move. If knight f3. This is common for Sicilian. I recommend c5. Also after d3, I recommend that we go with c5. If b3, I will recommend again e5. We can fight for a full center again pretty easily. And finally, if d4, which is probably the most natural, after knight f3, after knight f3, where we played Sicilian, after d4, I recommend that we go with d5, and we are actually in a d4, d5 or d4, knight f6 openings again. Okay, so if white plays some non-standard, not common and not the best openings, we will either try to play either Sicilian c5 or a knight f6 d5 moves, or in some situations even e5. Although we are not e5 players, after e4 we do not play e5 but c5. But when we are allowed to fight easily for the center, I will also recommend e5. Okay, we now step back, and now we cover shortly English opening, which start with c4. And after c4, I will actually recommend e5. So after c4, we will be a little bit out of our territory, but we will soon choose moves which are common for our positions. So how can white proceed? How can white proceed after c4, e5? There are many of options. If knight f3, we will immediately chase the knight with e4. Okay, that's already known to us. If d4, we will immediately take the pawn. And now, if knight c3, this is all, of course, a mistake, but some players will pre-move this after, because this is natural in such positions, d4, c4, knight c3. This will be, of course, a blunder. We will simply take the knight, but this happens from time to time, and that's why I show you these moves. Okay, if a more careful player plays something like knight, sorry, if instead of knight c3, white plays e3, we will not take immediately. We have time to play bishop b4 check. We already common to such moves. And if knight c3, of course, this is a blunder. We simply take with the pawn. If more careful players tries to play knight d2, but this is also a mistake, because d takes e3, attacks the knight, which is also under a pin. Of course, f takes e3 will not help because we have a further pressure with either queen e7 or queen h4 check, and we have simply a crushing position already. And actually after this bishop b4 move, the best for white is to play bishop d2, but we also have an advantage here, and the best way to proceed is queen e7, putting immediately further pressure to e3 pawn. So e3 was not the best option here for white. So some players will probably play e3 here, but that is not the great option for. So e3 is not playable here. If knight f3, attacking our d4 pawn, this is now better. But now we again can play bishop b4 check and fight continuous. And finally, if immediately queen takes d4, this is okay move, but not the best play by white because we have a developing move with the tempo, knight c6, immediately chasing the queen, and opening principles are on our sides, on our side. Okay, we step back, and if instead of d4 white plays d3, which is okay move after c4 d3, it's completely playable. Now I recommend that we simply go with developing on the king side, knight f6. Okay. If e4 move, now I recommend that we play bishop c5 because this puts some pressure on f2 pawn, and e3 is no longer playable. White cannot move back with the pawn, so e4 is already played, so bishop c5 is recommended here. And if e3, as I now mentioned e3, now we again simply go with knight f6 developing move, and in some other variations we simply develop this way. So if instead white plays g3, we will play knight f6 developing move, and if knight c3, we will again play knight f6 developing move. So if you know the openings from d4 and e4 repertoire, you don't need to worry about this c4 opening. You will have enough knowledge how to fight this. And finally, we step back to the first move, and we will cover also shortly knight f3, the so-called Retti opening. Knight f3 is natural for Sicilian, and so for open Sicilian, and I will immediately invite for the open Sicilian with c5. So when I see knight f3 on the board, I almost 100% knows that it will be a Sicilian. I play c5, and actually and actually we will most probably go just to variations which we already know from the Sicilian, but let us cover some possibilities for white here. C3 is common for Alpine Sicilian. We will play simply knight f6 developing move here. Knight c3 is popular for both for enclosed and open Sicilian. Now we have time, and I recommend that we play d5 even here. So d5 was not popular in Sicilian, but after knight c3 we can play d5. Also, if white plays d3, which is a pretty passive for the Sicilian, I recommend knight c6. Just try to remember that I recommended c5, knight c6 as long as white plays passive moves. For example, I don't like to play a knight c6 if bishop can immediately attack that pawn, but now bishop cannot join. There are even two pawns on the way of the bishop on f1, so knight c6 is just a beautiful move here. Also, if white plays, for example, b3, some uncommon move, we will again play knight c6. If e3, now white opens the bishop for going to b5, so now I will not play knight c6 because of the bishop b5 coming. I will now first play knight f6 instead. Okay, stepping back, if d6, this is now common for the Sicilian to take on so d4 and c takes d4, followed most probably with knight takes d4 and known variations. We step back, if e4 is now played, but we are happy to see this. After e4 and d5, we are completely in our opening repertoire for black. So this was just a transposition of e4, c5, knight f3, d6. Then this will most commonly lead to Najdorf variation of the Sicilian. And finally, if some other moves which are not very active, like g3, we will again be allowed to play knight c6 first, and also after c4 I also recommend that we play knight c6 first and then fight for further ideas in the Sicilian, either d6 or a knight f3 or e5 later, and so on. Okay, thank you for watching. This is all for my opening repertoire recommendations, both for white and black. I hope that you will enjoy. I hope that we will learn much, and I hope that one day when I master these openings, I will record new opening, better repertoire for white and black with more variations, maybe with not covering all those played by amateur players, which I simply now needed to show in this first variant when both me and my um, and you who watch these videos, most of us are probably not professional players, not with high rating, and we are just beginners which start to learn how to play, maybe with solid rating, but certainly most of us are below 200 to 2000, I guess, and so we will simply learn at this point. So that's all, folks, and we shall continue with regular puzzle videos, and I hope that you will enjoy also that too. Bye bye.